Root to Ring, a resilient parenting podcast. I'm Abby, your host and fellow mom in the messy middle of motherhood with you. And today we have a little bit of a continuation of our conversation from the past 2 episodes. But this is when you've tried the repair, you've been working to rebuild the trust, and it feels like it's still just not working. Now, I wanted to make a quick note because when I talk about rebuilding trust, a theme that I actually had come up with my clients this week, and even some of the questions that I had about last week's episode is, okay, but Abby, what happens when my teen is the one that needs to rebuild trust with me? And trust me, we will get there, because I don't want you to think or assume that when I'm talking about rebuild trust, that means that the onus is completely on you. When I'm talking about rebuilding trust, I'm talking about when your actions warrant needing to rebuilding trust, when you have done something to break your teen's trust, not necessarily when they've done something to break your trust, because that kind of goes into our conversation around boundaries, but also communication and having clear expectations. So please know that when I'm talking about rebuilding trust in this context, I'm not saying your teen broke your trust and you need to go and own up for it. This is about when you have broken your teen's trust and you have done something on your end that feels like you have caused rupture that you want to repair and rebuild that trust and safety with them on. That's what we're talking about today. So what happens? What do you do when you feel like you have been trying everything and your teen is still not opening up? Maybe you're still being met with silence or some of those shutdowns. And it could be that sense of like, Abby, I'm trying absolutely everything, and they're still not opening up to me. I must be doing it wrong. It must be me. I'm the failure. Those are messages I want you to turn down. I want you to even just completely cut them off. Because the reality is you are continually, or that's our theme here, is we are trying new things. You're literally trying new rhythms. And I think about when I was in like elementary school and we would have music class and they would hand everybody a little toy and you'd have to an instrument, try to learn how to keep the beat with that. Not everybody got it on the first try. In fact, I was that kid that didn't have the best rhythm. I would do my absolute best, but it would take me a little bit to get into the groove, to get an understanding of what kind of music we were even playing. And so I don't want you to think, hey, you've been handed a new instrument, you're expected to get it figured out yesterday. I want you to think of it as this is a new tool, a new instrument, something that I still have to learn and grow in, and I'm not expected to be perfect right off the bat. In fact, not just you. I don't expect you to be perfect. I don't expect your teen to respond perfectly either until they get the hang of the new rhythm as well. So that's what we're diving into today, not just how to start repair, but what to do when your teen still doesn't feel safe enough to lean back in. And like I said, spoiler alert, this doesn't mean that you have failed. It means that you are learning. And learning is a part of resilience. So I want to talk about what happens when we have this, like, I've tried everything and nothing is changing. This is what I've heard from many of my clients. This is what I hear from moms all the time. It's like, I've said, I'm sorry, I've given space, I've kept my cool, but they still won't talk to me. And I realize that's a very frustrating place to be in when you are making effort. And I think especially for the perfectionists, we tend to get accolades and recognition and like all the hurrahs from achievement, whereas effort is really what we want to be focusing on. That's where like the gold lies, is that your effort is what matters, not just when you achieve the things that you're working towards. So take a deep breath. It is so normal. And it doesn't mean that your teen is trying to punish you or play games. I realize there's a time and place where sometimes your teen is doing that. So I'm going to caveat, yes, there are special occasions where your teen is leaning into their hurt on purpose. But I will say, more often than not, that silence is not intended to be punishment for you. it's actually more of an indication that there's still fear in their system, that they're fearful of being misunderstood, or they're afraid of having more conflict, that they might fear being vulnerable with you because they're not sure what kind of reaction or response they're going to get. And so they kind of stay in that self-preservation mode. It makes me think of a hermit crab, where I don't know if you've ever seen them, but they're the crabs that have the shells on them. And usually they can be like very skittish because they get scared and they go right back into their shell. And actually, I had hermit crabs growing up too, which is what makes me think of when you have a hermit crab and you kind of have to like gain their trust. You have to show them, hey, I'm here to feed you your food, give you your water, give you your space. I'm here to take care of you, but I'm going to be a consistent presence. And eventually, over time, you gain that trust so that they start to come out of that shell. Now, if you're like, what are you doing? Right? They're going to go right back in. And so sometimes, even if you're trying and doing your best and you're not even having the explosion that you might have had before, or you're not even having your own sense of reactivity in your hermit crab moment, they're still learning. I don't know if it's safe to come out yet. And so I want you to try to not take it personally as best you can when they go back in, because they're still learning. And we're really kind of paying attention to their wiring, your shared history. Some of that fear that took time to get built up is going to take some time to unwind. But what I want you to hear is that silence is not always resistance. Sometimes it is that self-preservation. So when we start to interpret that silence or distance as kind of disobedience or even rejection, we're trying to rush in to fix it. But when we approach it and interpret it as fear, it gives us a chance to breathe and slow down the process. So in this next section, I want to think about how silence is a signal, not just a diagnosis. So when your teen is shutting down after a rupture, even when you're taking ownership for your part, it might be tempting to think they're just being dramatic. I've done my part. They need to meet me halfway. Or maybe they don't even care. And I realize there is a time and place, right, where they do need to step up eventually. But like I mentioned, I believe last week, is that you're the parent. Sometimes they're not going to meet you halfway. Sometimes you have to do the annoying and hard but holy work of meeting them 95, maybe even 99% of the way until you start to rebuild that trust and you can kind of get back to a halfway point. So thinking about silence as a signal, it's communication. Withdrawal is communication. And it's often still saying, that hermit crab, I'm still scared. And I don't know how to talk about this without it blowing up again. I'm not sure you're actually going to hear me. Your teen really is watching for that consistency, not just a single repair moment, but a safe pattern. And thinking back to my example of learning instruments in elementary school, they're hearing the song for the first time and it kind of sounds like that elementary school song where everything's a little bit jumbled and you're like, is this Jingle Bells or Hot Cross Buns? I'm not sure what's happening right now. And so for them, they're like, is it safe to come out of my shell? Am I going to be okay? Or is somebody going to shake a maraca in my ear and blow up on me again? And I'm going to just have to go back into self-preservation mode. I know we're kind of mixing metaphors here, so hopefully you're following along with me. But that silence really is a signal that this is why I say it often and all the time, especially with my clients, is that repair does not erase the rupture. It creates a rhythm of safety. That's even when I think about being rooted in resilience, that it takes time to get into that rhythm. It takes time to root down into something new. And when that rhythm is still new, it might take time for your teen's nervous system to catch up. And I want you to take a moment to put yourself in a place where you were a teenager and maybe you grew up in a family where there was all kinds of rupture and maybe not even a lot of repair. And I want you to think about how you felt in those moments. Did you feel like, oh, my mom and dad are trying something new and different this time? I'm safe to come out of my shell. I'm good. Or were you in self-preservation mode where you're like, I don't know yet. I don't want to come out yet. I don't want to test these waters yet because I am not sure if this new rhythm is going to stick or if I feel like I'm going to step out in trust and have that trust broken again. So I want you to think about silence is a signal. It's a signal. It doesn't mean it has to be forever, because in our next section, what I also want to talk about is that it feels personal, but it isn't always. Sometimes, like I said, it can be, but most often your teen is operating from a place of fight, flight, or freeze, and that it's not intentionally to hurt or reject you. So when you feel like they're giving you that cold shoulder, obviously it's going to feel like rejection. It brings up those thoughts, that kind of internal narrative that you might have of like, I've ruined everything. I'm not a safe person. They hate me. And those are things, again, I really want you to check those narratives, because if you are actively working towards doing things differently, towards showing up consistently, that to me indicates somebody who is a safe person, who is trying their best. The idea of ruining everything is very much all or nothing thinking, that you might have ruined a moment. I've ruined so many moments. Your teen is going to ruin a lot of moments, but it doesn't mean that everything is ruined. And that's something else that I want you to think about, is like even the language you're using or the way you're thinking about yourself. Are you saying, I've ruined this is the end, goodbye forever? Or can we start to separate you from your actions and see what you have done instead of making it what I've done defines me forever and always? Even thinking about they hate me. Odds are your child does not hate you. Now, they may not always like you, but let's be so honest. You may not always like them, right? That we're human. It doesn't mean that that takes away our love from one another, though. And thinking about that idea of they hate you, that feels very extreme to me. They might not like you or what you did in that moment, which is more likely. They probably were not a fan of your actions. And vice versa. You're not always a fan of theirs. So if you're starting to go to those negative places, again, I want you to cut it off. And once you start focusing on what is true and thinking about how you are not necessarily your behavior, that you, in and of yourself, are working and doing things, you're trying to do things differently. You're not going to get it right 100%, and that's okay. But I don't want you to buy into I've ruined everything. I'm not a safe person. They hate me. All those negative things. Because sometimes those thoughts are being fueled by your own story. Like I said, I want you to think about where you were at growing up. I want you to think about the people in your life. And I know it's not the same for everybody, but I will say a lot of the people that I've worked with, the women that I've worked with, they may not necessarily be close with their families, with their moms and dads, but they still have that place of love or compassion or even understanding, that even in the hurts that your parents might have caused you, there's usually still some sense of connection there. And if you do not have that, please don't take that as blame or shame from me. Sometimes it's very much warranted. But I think about what was happening in your situation and how you are trying so hard to do things differently, that it doesn't mean that like you are your parent, right? And so thinking about your own story, that maybe you grew up in a home where conflict meant distance. Maybe you were being punished by silence. Maybe there was communication that was supposed to be happening, or the way in which it was happening was like really not healthy. And so this episode, what we're talking about today, is not just about teen communication. It's about your inner world too, right? That's part of where we're coming from and how we are creating our legacy. The idea of root, where we were planted, and the rings, the ripple effect we're having in life, and how this tends to inform that, and how we can start working on even understanding the narrative of where we grew up, of our roots, and how to, doesn't mean we have to just stay where we're planted. It doesn't mean we have to just continue to grow into unhealthy roots. It means we can make a change so that we can change our outcomes, so that we can change our families, so that we can change our future, so that the generations that follow us don't have to continue the pattern of hurt that we grew up with. So thinking about your inner world, thinking about when we have to hold our own triggers, when we have to deal with the things that cause hurt for us, and when we have to look at it through a lens of compassion, we can stop making their silence about our worth and start to get curious about what's underneath that silence. And that's the next section I want to jump into, which is how to stay present without pushing. This is that when your teen is not talking to you, what do I do to remain consistent and steady to keep working towards the things I know are going to be healthy for my family, even though it's really, really hard and I'm not getting the achievement right now. It's the effort. This is the grueling work. This is the having to plant the seeds without getting to see them come to fruition yet. So a few reminders I want you to hold on to. First being, I want you to model emotional availability, not emotional urgency. So what does that look like? So glad you asked. Instead of saying, hey, we need to talk, instead, I want you to try, I'm here when you're ready. I care about you, even in the quiet. And I know I've mentioned it before, but a lot of the teens that I've worked with have told me, Abby, sometimes I just want my mom to sit with me. I know there's stuff that I need to probably apologize for. There's stuff we need to talk about. There's always going to be something. Sometimes I just appreciate her quiet presence with me and just getting to be near one another. So that's even just thinking about like those kind of phrases you can keep in mind, right? They do not need to be hard and fast scripts, but instead of the we need to talk, the urgency, it's being available and saying, hey, I'm here for you when you're ready. Come talk to me. I want to hear from you. And with that, your teen is going to test your availability before they test their vulnerability, right? They want to know, hey, is my mom actually ready when she says she is? Is she going to be able to take on anything I'm saying to her? And that's where it is the hard work of sometimes having to be prepared for whatever is going to come out of their mouth. But it's that emotional availability of being able to connect with them when they do open up. So let them see you stay ready, even if they're not ready yet. And I know that can be really hard, but that is part of that consistency and showing them a new rhythm. It makes me think about when you have, again, I'm going to keep going with this music metaphor, but when you have that beat, when you have that consistency, and I think about like even elementary, when you're trying to learn and you're trying to jump into the song, it's going to feel clunky and awkward at first. But when you know somebody else is going first, oftentimes it gives you the courage to then go. And I know it's hard because guess what? As the parent, you're going first. Your teen is looking to you for when they can jump in. So first thing to keep in mind, model emotional availability, not emotional urgency. Second thing, I want you to normalize awkwardness. Sometimes your teen wants to open up, but they don't know how, or they worry that it's going to feel weird. And I am somebody that like loves and thrives in awkwardness because it's human nature. It's part of just who we are. I think it's oftentimes when people are showing up as their most vulnerable and authentic selves, which I love. And so your teen, they're already at school all day, every day, having to like put on a mask, trying to impress their peers, trying to figure out who they are, that they are walking on their own eggshells of like, don't say something stupid, don't do the wrong thing, don't, reach out to that person or say it in that way because it's just going to be received as stupid or dumb or awkward or cringe or fill in the blank, right? So with you at home, with the safety that you provide, they want to open up, but they don't know how. So you can try something like, I know we're still trying to find our rhythm again. It's okay if this feels messy. We're learning together. And again, that's part of where I like to provide phrases. I like to provide frameworks and different things to help you communicate. But I never want something to feel so scripted that you don't know what to say, because that doesn't always feel as natural and authentic as fumbling through your words and actually getting the awkward parts out, because that's also going to help you to communicate and connect with your teen in a way that you might not have been able to otherwise. So letting them know, hey, I'm going first. This is going to feel awkward. This is going to feel messy, but I'm in it with you. Let's try. And so that's the second piece, is normalize awkwardness. And the third thing here is I want you to build connection outside of conversation. And I know we've talked about this before. That's even that like moment of just like quietness, of silent presence together. Doesn't always have to be silent, right? That not every moment of reconnection has to be that deep. It could just be shared spaces, some shared laughter, even just small gestures. All of that helps rewire safety. And even tapping back into normalizing awkwardness, that I think about when your teen's going to think it's so cringy. But trying to communicate with them, maybe even using some of their phrases, using some of their teen terminology, that those are moments too, to build connection outside of conversation, to normalize awkwardness and show them your humanness, right? That shows them it's okay to jump in, even if it feels awkward, even if you don't feel ready. So I want you to think about that trust isn't rebuilt in a single conversation. It's not just one talk, that it's rebuilt through presence, patterns, and patience. And so again, third piece is build connection outside of conversation. And the last thing here is I want you to think about the deeper shift from control to curiosity. And I love this because I think so often control tells us that we need to jump in and fix it, that we have to be in control of the situation. Otherwise, that means all these negative things about us, all these negative things about our teen, all the negative things about our relationship with them. But here's the big idea I want you to walk away with today, which is disconnection doesn't always mean disrepair, right? It often means fear, and fear needs curiosity, not control. How often have you yourself felt fearful, and the moment somebody steps in and tries to take control of the situation, it might just amplify your fear more? So when we stop trying to fix the silence and instead start to get curious about it, right? Like I said, silence is a signal. What are they signaling to me? Is it like the bat signal where they're like, I'm in distress? Is it the bat signal saying, I'm mad at you right now, Mom, and I need a little bit more? Is it that signal of saying, I feel really awkward and school was actually super overwhelming today and it has nothing to do with what's going on between us, right? Get curious instead of assuming, because everything is shifting. And you get to move from how do I get them to talk to me to how can I be a safe place when they're ready? And that's what this work is about. That's what my heart and hope behind Rooted in Resilience is. That's the whole point behind this podcast, which is Root to Ring, is how do I become the kind of parent my teen feels safe returning to even after silence? How do I, and I like the word become, but I also like to think about how do I step into the parent that I am capable of being, by changing and shifting around some of my perceptions and assumptions about myself, about my teen, and about our relationship. So next steps are I want you to even think about like practicing one of those 3 tips from this week, which again, those are modeling emotional availability or normalizing awkwardness, or even trying to build connection outside of conversation. Because if you're in a season where your teen feels distant, if you've tried the repair, but you still feel like there's that wall up between you, this is your reminder. You're not failing. You are planting seeds. That's the effort. That's what you're working towards. And some of them just take longer to grow. But I want you to keep showing up. I want you to keep modeling that presence. I want you to keep tending the soil of safety, even when you can't see the fruit yet. Your team may not say it, but they will feel it. And I don't even know if I've mentioned this before, but I love that imagery of planting seeds. If you haven't noticed, I like trees. I like nature. That's a big part of what inspires me. And so thinking about having to plant seeds, thinking about being rooted, that you are getting to plant seeds, that you are getting to create space for your teen to grow even more, to grow into healthier patterns and routines. And that takes time and hard work. And it doesn't mean you just give up on your seed. It means you plant it, you tend to it, and you get to see it start to grow. And the hope for you is that you're going to get to appreciate and enjoy the fruit that comes from that. So if this episode resonated with you, would you please share it with a mom who's walking through silence too? Or you can even send me a DM on Instagram with the word repair. I would love to support you in this season. I will be the voice that you need to hear when you're navigating silence with your child. And so I want you to remember, you do not need to be perfect. You just need to be rooted.